In the heart of deep space, where dragons are trained as guardians of the colonies, one legendary beast, once hailed as unstoppable, has fallen into darkness, broken, feared, and locked away. But when a blind boy dares to step forward, a bond is formed that could either save the future or destroy it all. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. Everyone at Ember Station remembered the name Kalen. The black-scaled dragon had once been the shining star of the interstellar guardians, the kind of creature spoken about in stories told to inspire young recruits. His wings carried him faster than any other. His fire cut through enemy craft like paper, and his instincts saved more than one colony from disaster. But the glory that surrounded his name had dimmed, leaving only whispers of fear and uncertainty. Kalen had not always been feared. In the early years, his partnership with the Guardians had been unmatched. People would gather in the training dome just to watch him fly, his movements sharp and graceful, his roars echoing like thunder across the metal halls. Children looked up at him as the ultimate protector, and officers spoke of him as the perfect example of what a dragon could be. He was not only powerful, he was intelligent, loyal, and steady. But all legends meet a breaking point. For Kalen, it came during a mission on the frozen mines of Titan. Something went wrong that day, something no one fully understood. The reports mentioned a collapsing tunnel, injured miners, and a wing torn in the chaos. Kalen had carried survivors out of the wreckage, but when the mission ended, his fire no longer burned the same. Weeks of isolation followed in the recovery chambers, where the walls were too narrow for flight, and the silence pressed in on him like a weight. Handlers noticed the change first. His once bright eyes dulled. His movements grew restless. The dragon, who had once stood calm in any situation, now pressed against the reinforced walls, pacing endlessly. When approached, he no longer welcomed familiar voices. Instead, his spines lifted, and a low growl rumbled from his chest, a sound so chilling that even seasoned officers stepped back. Commander Selric, head of operations, watched the decline with hard eyes. "He is too dangerous," he muttered, after one attempt to reintroduce training ended with Kalen slamming his body against the barrier, the impact shaking the chamber. "We cannot risk him breaking through. He cannot be trusted anymore." Many nodded in quiet agreement, yet not everyone could let go so easily. Mara, a senior handler who had worked with dragons for decades, remembered when Kalen was just a young hatchling, curious and bright. She had trained him, guided him, and seen the promise in him. Now, as she passed the containment cell, she felt the same pang each time. Behind those blazing eyes, there was not only rage, there was sorrow. Kalen's reputation spread across Ember Station. Officers whispered about the once great dragon, reduced to a shadow of himself. Recruits avoided walking near his chamber, afraid of the growl that carried through the steel walls. Rumors filled the air. Some said he had gone feral, that he was waiting for the first chance to break free. Others believed he was simply broken beyond repair, a reminder that even legends could fall. The conversations in the command deck turned darker. Some pushed for retirement, not the kind that meant peace and open skies, but the kind that meant an end. He cannot be placed on a preserve, Selrick argued. He is a threat to anyone near him. If containment fails, lives will be lost. Still, a few voices dared to hope. Mara argued that dragons, like people, could heal if given the chance. He is not lost, she insisted. He is hurt, and hurt can be mended. Her words fell heavy in the silence, for no one had seen even a flicker of the old Kalen in months. In the center of this conflict was Darren, a specialist known for his careful methods and quiet strength. He had spent countless hours near Kalen's chamber, trying everything from gentle words to strict commands. Yet nothing broke through the wall the dragon had built. Darren's own son, a boy named Orin, often waited for him after training sessions. The child had been blind since birth, but his other senses were sharp. While officers saw danger in Kalen's growl, Orin tilted his head and listened with curiosity, almost as though he could hear more than others. Orin's presence often unsettled the officers. "Keep him away from the chamber," they warned Darren. "If Kalen lashes out, it will be too late to protect the boy." Darren agreed in words, but inside he knew his son was braver than most. Orin never showed fear. Instead, he spoke softly about how the dragons sounded, how each one carried a rhythm in their breath and their movements. And then came the question no one expected. One quiet evening, as the artificial sun dimmed in the station's dome, Orin looked up at his father and asked, "Can I meet Kalen?" The room fell silent. Darren froze, caught between disbelief and dread. Commander Selrick, filling out reports nearby, nearly dropped his pen. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "The dragon is unstable. It would be reckless." Orin did not back down. "He is not bad," he said calmly. "He is scared. Someone just needs to talk to him differently." The words lingered in the air, heavy with possibility. Mara's eyes softened, her thoughts echoing what the boy had just spoken aloud. Even Major Tyros, a hardened officer who had never shown patience for risks, looked toward the chamber with a new question in his mind. No one gave an answer that night. Darren placed a hand on his son's shoulder, torn between his duty as a father and the quiet seed of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the boy was right. In the days that followed, whispers spread again, but this time they carried something different. The legend of Kalen was not finished yet. Perhaps his story was only waiting for someone bold enough to step closer. The corridor leading to Kalen's enclosure stretched long and cold. The metal walls hummed with the faint echo of the station's engines. But to Darren, it felt like a march into danger. Beside him walked his son, Orin, calm as ever, cane tapping gently against the floor. Though he could not see, his head lifted slightly, listening to the faint scrape of claws against steel in the distance. Inside the enclosure, Kalen was restless. His black scales glinted under the artificial lights, his chest rising with a deep growl that rolled through the air. When the heavy doors opened, the sound grew louder, making even the armed officers in the observation deck tense. Commander Selrick leaned over the railing, shaking his head. "This is a mistake," he muttered. Darren placed a protective hand on Oren's shoulder. "Stay behind me at all times," he whispered. "If anything happens, we leave immediately." Oren only nodded. He did not tremble, nor did he lean away from the sound of the dragon's growl. Instead, he tilted his head, as if searching for a hidden note in the rumble. Kalen's spines bristled, his lips curled back, rows of sharp teeth flashing as he lunged at the transparent barrier. The reinforced wall flexed under the impact, shuddering but holding. Several officers gasped. Mara, standing near the controls, bit her lip but did not look away. Darren's heart raced. He started to guide Oren back toward the door, but the boy stepped forward instead. His cane tapped once on the floor. Steady, deliberate. "It's okay," Oren said softly, his voice calm, clear, and steady. "I'm not here to hurt you." The words seemed to hang in the air. Cutting through the chaos, Kalen froze, claws still pressed against the barrier. The growl faltered, shifting into a low, uncertain sound. His glowing eyes flicked forward, narrowing at the boy who stood unafraid. Oren raised his hand slowly, palm open toward the glass. "I just want to say hello," he whispered. Darren's breath caught in his chest. "Oren?" he began, but Mara held up a hand, signaling him to wait. Her eyes were wide, filled with both fear and wonder. Kalen lowered his head slightly. His spines did not relax, but his body stopped trembling with rage. Step by slow step, he leaned closer to the barrier until his snout hovered inches from the boy's outstretched palm. In the observation deck, the silence was heavy. Officers who had once believed the dragon lost forever now stared in disbelief. Major Tyros leaned forward, muttering, "I've never seen him do that." Oren's hand stayed steady, pressed flat against the transparent wall. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. And then something no one expected happened. Kalen pressed his snout against the exact spot where Oren's hand rested. The barrier vibrated with the contact, but there was no growl, no violent strike. Only a trembling exhale, a puff of warm steam against the glass. Darren felt tears sting his eyes. After months of fear, after endless warnings, he was witnessing the impossible. The officers forgot to breathe. Commander Selric gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles whitened. "We cannot allow this," he said, his voice unsteady. But even he could not look away. Oren smiled faintly, though he could not see the astonished faces around him. "Hi," he whispered. "You're safe with me." Minutes stretched like hours. Kalen lowered himself closer to the ground, his powerful body pressed low, his eyes never leaving the boy's face. For the first time in months, the dragon's gaze held no rage. Instead, it carried something fragile, something like hope. Mara's voice was hushed as she spoke. We should let him feel more." Darren turned sharply. "Are you suggesting—" But before he could finish, Mara's fingers moved across the control panel. With a hiss, a narrow section of the barrier retracted, leaving an opening just wide enough for a hand to slip through. Commander Selric's voice crackled over the intercom. "Stop immediately! That breach is unsafe!" But Oren had already extended his hand into the opening, calm and unafraid. Kalen flinched at first, nostrils flaring. But then he leaned forward. The boy's palm brushed against warm, scaled skin. The touch was gentle, steady, filled with quiet trust. A sound rose from the dragon's chest. Not a growl, not a snarl, but something low and resonant, almost like a purr. It vibrated through Oren's arm, humming deep into his bones. "Hello, Kalen," Oren said softly. Darren's knees nearly buckled with relief. His son's hand rested against a creature the station had deemed untouchable, and instead of fury, the dragon gave a sound of peace. The observation deck erupted with whispers. Some officers shook their heads in disbelief. Others pressed closer to the glass, desperate to understand what they were witnessing. Major Tyros turned to Mara. "I have trained dragons for 30 years. Never have I seen this." Mara's eyes glistened. "It isn't training," she whispered. "It's trust." Time seemed to pause. Kalen remained still, his massive frame trembling not with anger, but with something softer, something long buried. Oren traced the contours of the dragon's snout with his fingers, mapping ridges and scales as though painting an image in his mind. "You're strong," he murmured, "but you don't have to be angry anymore." Darren's chest swelled with a mix of fear and pride. In that moment, he knew his son had unlocked something no command, no treat, no handler could ever react. When at last the boy stepped back, Kalen did not roar or retreat. Instead, he pressed closer, eyes soft, ears lowered, in a gesture that looked almost like gratitude. The silence that followed was unshakable. Everyone who witnessed it knew the truth. A boy who could not see had seen deeper than them all. And though Commander Selric refused to speak, his expression revealed the shift. Ember Station had been given a glimpse of hope, and it had come from the most unlikely pair. A fallen guardian and a fearless child. Days passed after the first contact between Oren and Kalen, and Ember Station began to change. Officers who once avoided the dragon's chamber now lingered outside, curious and amazed. The once feared guardian, who had been called broken and dangerous, now lowered his head whenever Oren entered the room. Each visit brought progress. Kalen no longer roared when handlers approached. He listened, he responded, and sometimes he even let out a low dot. Soothing hum when the boy's hand touched his scales. Darren watched in awe. Every command he had once given without success was now followed when Oren stood nearby. Kalen took flight again in the practice dome, his wings cutting through the air with renewed strength. He was faster, sharper, more focused than before. Officers whispered that the dragon had not only healed, but grown stronger. The Stellar Council sent observers, curious about the miracle taking place on Ember Station. Among them was Dr. Leora Vey, a respected scholar of dragon behavior. For 3 days, she studied the connection between Oren and Kalen. Her notes filled data tablets, yet even she admitted quietly to Major Tyros, "I cannot explain this. It is more than training. It's something deeper, something beyond science." Word of the bond spread far beyond Ember Station. News drones captured footage of Kalen bowing his head to Oren, of the boy walking unafraid into the enclosure. The story broadcast across the colonies, inspiring families and soldiers alike. For a moment, the system felt united by hope. But hope is fragile, and peace does not last forever. 3 weeks after Kalen's reinstatement, the station alarms blared. The sound echoed through the halls, sharp and urgent. Officers rushed to command posts, handlers sprinted toward the Dragon bays, and civilians were moved to secure areas. The Crimson threat had returned. The Crimson Phantoms were an enemy the colony still did not fully understand. Humanoid in form, but alien in every way. Their skin glowed with a dark red hue, their eyes black and hollow. They had arrived at the edges of the system 5 years earlier. Every attempt at communication had failed. Every encounter had ended in violence. On the command deck, Commander Selric stood rigid as Lieutenant Callus reported. Phantom warships detected near the Europa outpost. 3 vessels in standard formation. ... They've broken through the outer defenses. Major Tyros asked quickly. Civilian numbers? Callus's hands flew across the panel. Research crew of 37, plus families. Approximately 55 civilians in total. Evacuation underway, but will require at least 3 hours. Selric's jaw tightened. Deploy the 7th Dragon Squadron. They must buy us every minute possible. In the Dragon bays, chaos ruled. Handlers secured armor onto massive wings, buckled harnesses, and tightened neural link helmets. Dragons roared, sensing the tension, their bodies shifting with unease. Amid the clamor, Kalen paced inside his stall, wings brushing the steel walls. He knew battle was coming. Darren worked quickly, checking each strap of the dragon's armor. You'll be fine, he murmured, though his own heart hammered. Just remember your training. Then he heard the soft tap of a cane. Orin had entered the bay. Dad, the boy called, his voice steady despite the alarms. Is Kalen going to fight? Darren turned sharply. Orin, you shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. I heard the alarms, the boy said firmly. Tell me the truth. There was no point in hiding it. Yes, Darren admitted. The Phantoms are attacking Europa. Families need time to escape. Kalen is being sent to protect them. Orin moved closer, his cane tapping against the floor until he reached Kalen's armored snout. The dragon instantly calmed, leaning forward with a soft hum. The boy placed his hand on the warm scales. Be careful out there, he whispered. They don't know who they're facing. Kalen released a small plume of steam, pressing gently into the boy's touch. 30 seconds to deployment, called the bay manager. Orin's hand trembled slightly as he whispered, Come back to me, Kalen. Promise me you'll come back. The dragon lowered his head, pressing his armored forehead against the boy's chest. It was a gesture no one had seen before. An unspoken vow between guardian and child. Then the order came. The bay doors opened. One by one, the dragons of the 7th Squadron leapt into the void, wings spreading against the thin European air. Kalen was 3rd. At Darren's command, he launched from the ramp, the neural link connecting dragon and handler in perfect sync. The journey to Europa was silent, but tense. Flashes of weapons fire lit the skies above the icy surface. The outpost sat surrounded by phantom ships. Evacuation transports scrambling to launch. 7th Squadron, engage at will, came the order. Primary objective, protect the evacuation. The battle erupted instantly. Phantoms poured into the sky with jetpacks and plasma rifles, meeting dragons head-on. Fire lit the darkness, claws met steel, and the air filled with roars and screams. Kalen fought with renewed strength, his flame cutting through enemy armor. Guided by Darren, he struck with precision, weaving through hostile fire with deadly spear. Yet, as the fight raged, Lieutenant Callus's voice echoed in the comms. Phantom reinforcements approaching from the south. Estimate 1 full squadron. Time to contact, 12 minutes. The outpost had not yet completed its evacuation. Civilians were still trapped. If the reinforcements arrived, they would be lost. Darren stared at the tactical display. His mind raced. Then he made the decision. "Command, this is Specialist Darren Reeves," he said, requesting permission for Kalen and I to intercept the Southern force directly. "We'll delay them." The channel went silent. Finally, Commander Selrick replied, voice heavy. "That is suicide. 2 against a full squadron? We can outmaneuver them," Darren pressed. "All we need is time. Civilians first. Let us do this." There was a pause. Then Selrick exhaled. "Permission granted. But get out the moment it turns bad. That's an order." Kalen banked sharply, turning south. Through the neural link, Darren felt no fear from the D, only determination. Only the memory of a boy's small hand pressed against his snout. The crimson phantoms waited in the skies ahead, their weapons glowing. Kalen roared, wings beating hard, as he surged forward into the storm. And so the legend of Ember Station entered its darkest chapter. The fallen guardian, reborn, now faced the crimson threat. The skies above Europa burned with fire and ice. Kalen twisted through the darkness, wings cutting against the thin atmosphere, flames bursting from his throat in brilliant arcs. Beside him, phantom warriors swarmed, their crimson armor glowing against the cold light of the distant sun. Through the neural link, Darren felt every strain of muscle, every beat of the dragon's heart. They were outnumbered, but Kalen's focus never wavered. For 20 minutes, dragon and handler fought as one. Their only goal was to keep the phantom reinforcements from reaching the research station, where civilians were still boarding evacuation transports. Every second mattered. Every breath Kalen took was a wall between the phantoms and the families trying to escape. But the storm of enemies did not end. A blast seared across Kalen's left wing, tearing through the membrane. The dragon roared in pain, spinning before catching himself. Through the neural link, Darren felt the agony like fire burning in his own body. "Fall back," Darren shouted, his voice breaking. "We've done enough. We can U-turn now." But Kalen refused. In the connection between them, Darren felt more than defiance. He felt memories. The boy's hand against his snout. The quiet word, friend. The warmth of trust given when all others had turned away. Kalen's determination filled the link like a tide. He would not retreat. Not while lives were at stake. The dragon surged forward again, wings straining despite the wound. He roared with all the strength left in him, fire blazing as he struck directly at the lead phantom vessel. The blast tore open its hull, flames spilling into the void. The ship staggered, collapsing toward Europa's surface. But the cost was heavy. Kalen's breathing grew ragged, his movements slowed. Through the link, Darren felt his energy flickering like a candle in the wind. "Stay with me," Darren whispered desperately. "We're going home. Orin is waiting for you." The mention of the boy seemed to steady Kalen. With the last of his strength, he pulled free of the collapsing vessel. Wings trembling, but still beating. On the command channel, Lieutenant Callus's voice rang out. Evacuation complete. All civilians aboard transports. Retreat immediately. Relief washed over Darren. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had held the line long enough. But Kalen was failing. The dragon's body shook, his wing torn and bleeding, his chest rising unevenly. The flight back to Ember Station was a blur of fear and hope. Medical teams rushed to meet them as soon as they landed. Kalen was secured in a medical bay, his scales scorched, his breathing shallow. Dr. Liorave delivered the grim report. Massive internal damage, severe wing injuries, burns across his body. We are doing everything we can, but his chances are uncertain. Darren's world crumbled. He stood outside the medical chamber, surrounded by officers who called Kalen a hero. But their words felt hollow. The only sound that reached him was the familiar tap of a cane. Oren had arrived. He moved through the crowd, face pale but calm. "Dad," he called softly. "Where is Kalen?" Darren knelt, gathering his son into his arms. "He's very hurt, Oren. They say we can't see him now." The boy's voice trembled. "Please, let me try. I know he can hear me. I can help." Dr. Vey hesitated, but Darren looked at her with pleading eyes. "We have nothing to lose," he said quietly. After a moment, she nodded. 5 minutes, no more. The medical bay was silent, except for the Kalen lay motionless, his massive body covered in bandages, his breaths shallow and strained. Oren stepped forward, reaching out until his hand rested gently against the dragon's worn snout. "Hey, big guy," he whispered. "I'm here. You're not alone." At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Kalen released a faint rumble, weak but unmistakable, a sound of recognition. Oren smiled faintly, though his eyes filled with tears. "You kept your promise. You came back to me." The dragon's head shifted slightly, pressing into the boy's hand with fragile strength. The bond that had once healed Kalen's spirit now reached deeper, into the fragile line between life and death. Darren watched, unable to speak, as his son leaned closer. "Rest now," Oren whispered. "You've done enough. You are safe. I'll stay with you." The machine steadied. Kalen's breathing grew stronger, still labored, but no longer fading. Doctors exchanged astonished glances. But no explanation came. Whatever force kept the dragon alive was not medical science. It was trust, pure and unshakable. Hours later, Kalen opened his eyes fully. Weak but alive, he lifted his head and pressed it gently against Oren's chest. The boy wrapped both arms around him, holding steady, as though nothing else in the universe mattered. News spread quickly across Ember Station. The dragon who had been feared and forgotten was now not only a hero of battle, but a symbol of survival. Officers who had once doubted him now spoke with reverence. Civilians whispered his name with gratitude. Commander Selric, standing in the observation deck, shook his head in quiet wonder. "We trained him with fire and steel," he murmured, "but it took a child to show him what courage really means." Darren placed a hand on his son's shoulder. pride and awe mixing in his chest. "Not just any child," he said softly. "My son." In the days that followed, Kalen's strength returned slowly. His wing would bear scars forever, but his spirit was stronger than ever before. He walked the station not as a beast in chains, but as a guardian reborn. And at his side was Orin, the boy who had seen without sight, who had given trust where others saw only fear. Together they stood as a reminder to all who lived on Ember Station. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to rise even when broken. The legend of Kalen would live on, not just as the dragon of flame and steel, but as the guardian whose wings of courage carried hope for an entire system.